consultancy. Lorrae, thank you for your time. Good morning.
Good morning, Darren. Good morning.
We spoke. Was it last week? We spoke, or 2 weeks ago? I'm so
Yes,
confused
it
when
was
it comes
last
to
week.
correct. It was last week, wasn't it?
Yes,
The week
yes.
has gone either very quickly or very slowly. In that case, I can't quite work it out. So, from what we now know, we've got a bit more certainty as to when things might reopen. What is your sense, particularly in England, of where we are on this? Do you think it's realistic?
I think the government, have got their timetable of what they want to do. Behind that are a lot of worries and concerns from parents. As you know, we advise families and parents about all sorts of educational issues. And at the moment, this is the hot topic about whether they should be going back to school or not. And I've been, looking at different people's views on this and the way parents are feeling. And I think there is a massive balance here going on between the R value and the infection rate and the scientists' views of what's going on and whether we should in fact be advising families to go back to school, children to go back to school at this stage. It does seem as if there is a difference here between what is being asked of families and what scientists are saying. There is a feeling that they should be waiting a little bit longer, another 2 weeks, in which case the infection rate would be less. And I think this is what we're finding parents are feeling when they've been surveyed about this in the Great Big Parenting Lockdown Survey across the country. There were over 40,000 people who responded to it. And more than half were saying that they were not happy about going back. And we have found that with our own parents. They're not happy going back quite so early on. And there are certain conditions and reasons why people will be sending their children back. And there are pros and cons to that. But I think underneath it all is the real worry about infection risk, actually.
Well, the 1st of June is Monday. And that is when, in England, pupils in nurseries, early years and reception, and year 1 and year 6 will be able to return. We did speak last week, and there were concerns raised by parents. Do you think lots of parents are just going to say no? They're going to say, you know what, just because the school can do this does not mean that we have to.
Yes, I do. I think that talking to head teachers and talking to parents, I think they will exercise their right not to go back. I think some parents...
Is it their right? Is it a right not to do that? Or will there be sanctions, do you think, if
No,
parents keep their children up?
There won't be sanctions. Those have been waived at the moment. Normally there would be, but at the moment parents have the right to keep their children at home if they wish to. And I think that is the right way forward, because these are very uncertain times and we have no evidence that it's going to be all right until the track and trace is working properly. I think the concerns have always been that until that is tried and tested, there could be new outbreaks that are unnoticed, for several weeks or months. And we need real-time data. And I think a lot of parents are talking about this with me at the moment. That's why they're concerned. Not about school. They're dying for their children to go back to school. But what the implications are going to be for themselves, for their families, for their loved ones, and for their vulnerable relatives.
Yeah, and children will, in many cases, want to go back as well. It's not true, is it, to just assume that all children are enjoying this as an extended, never-ending holiday. In terms of what the government has said as it relates to its ambition, an ambition for all primary school children in England to spend a month back at school before the summer holidays, what is your response to that? Because that would be every single school child in England back at school very, very soon.
I think that is going to be a very unrealistic idea, because first of all, they have to see how this goes. Is it going to work? There are far too many children going back to school in that case than places for the children to be in physically. The schools are not designed for 2-meter distancing, and social distancing is the key to this, along with sanitizing. They're going to be putting children into small groups, maximum of 15, in one-way systems, having sandwich lunches, staying with one teacher all day. They're going to have days on and off. Some schools can only manage half days. There are many different answers to this. And the idea of bringing your whole school back, even in the countries where they've done that, they've had to use huge campuses in order to do that. Some places have got junior schools and senior schools on the same campus, so they've been able to. But here in the UK, we've got so many different types of school buildings and environments. It is really unlikely that we'd be able to do that safely. And going back again to the R value and the infection rate, that is the key. We don't want our children to be transmitting. We don't know certainly what that looks like at the moment. And it's so important that we protect everybody. So I think it's very unlikely. And I'm not sure this is what anybody really wants at the moment. Certainly our parents are talking about that. And as I said, the survey said as well that parents are very concerned about this.
In Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon has said that all schools will reopen from the 11th of August using a blended model, part-time study in school combined with some learning at home. Now, obviously, the term dates don't align anyway between those two different parts of the country. But is the 11th of August realistic? I mean, you've got Nicola Sturgeon here saying that she wants all schools to reopen, presumably for all pupils of all ages.
Well, I think this is more realistic because by then we'll have the track and trace will be up and running. We'll be able to see if it's working or not. And if that is working, then we're in a much stronger position to be able to bring children back into school safely. Again, going back to what parents are worried about, they are far more likely to be happy to send their children to school later on in August and September. And when they were surveyed, that's what they replied, than they are now. I think this is very early and somewhat premature. I was looking at the SAGE group and what they were recommending, and they were not recommending going back now. And I do think that parents are very mindful of that and very worried about what effect this is going to have. So going later would be better, definitely. And certainly just looking at scientific evidence would be safer for all of us.
And I suppose the real difficulty here, particularly, apart from pupils and students who would have had exams coming up, I guess that's going to be very disruptive for them. But those pupils who would have been making the transition from primary school to secondary school, I remember that, Lorrae, being a nervous time in my life. It is a time of nervousness and apprehension and excitement as well. For pupils who would have been making that particular transition this year, this is going to be hugely disruptive as well, isn't it?
It is. And, I work a lot with these children and their families, and they are very disappointed that they're not going to be at school, that they're not going to have those lever assemblies and writing all over each other's tops and having picnics. Yeah. I mean, this is a rite of passage for these children, and it's a massive sacrifice for them not to be going back. I think schools are going to do everything they can to provide as much as possible for these children, because the teachers feel it as well. They also are really disappointed and saddened not to be able to do this with the children. But everybody's going to make the best of it in true British style. They will. And we know that. The teachers are very positive about supporting the children. But I think parents can then talk to their children and let them validate their feelings about this loss and sadness, because they are the children. But they are picking up the cues from the adults. So if we all stay positive, parents stay positive and schools stay positive, the children will get through it and they will come out the other side and they will be less anxious about the transition. I know schools are making a big effort to help with the transition as well. Secondary schools will be, contacting. The schools will be active as usual. But I think it's up to us as the adults, as the parents, as the teachers, to provide that support for these children and help them through it so that they don't feel too great a sense of loss and can see the positives that may come out of this. Because, at the end of the day, helping children to develop coping strategies about uncertainty and anxiety, these are really important life skills for them.
Lorrae, very grateful for your time this morning. Lorrae Jaderberg, former deputy head teacher, founder and managing director of J